Well, AP Scholars, we're back with question two from the 2020 AP Computer Science A exam sample, which is uh, which is a pretty meh question. I don't love this question. It is unlike the first question. It is focusing on stuff that is generally not a huge focus um, in the free response section of the exam. So it's a bit of a curveball they're sending at us in this question. But whatever, that's fine. We need to be able to hit curveballs if we're gonna crush the exam, right? Might be good. It might have curveballs in it on Friday. We'll see. So let's take a look at this one and figure out what's going on. Don't forget to ask me questions, obviously. Not right now, because I am recorded. I can't hear you, despite these lovely headphones. But you can send me questions through email or on Teams is like the best. So do send me the questions if this explanation doesn't do it justice. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to take a look at this thing called the check digit class. Yes, it's a class and it has no instance variables, so it's pretty weird. In fact, all it is some static methods. And static methods are always confusing. No doubt about it. What is a static method? So static methods are like math.abs, my favorite of the math.abs, or math.random, or math.anything, right? Like just about anything. I can't think of anything it's not. So check digit is very much like the math class. It's full of tools. It's a utility class, a toolbox class that has stuff in it that you can use. Math.sign, math.pow. What's your favorite math? Like this is the kind of class we're dealing with. Has a bunch of static methods in it. What does it really matter? Ultimately, doesn't matter that much that it's static. It's there in some ways to kind of throw you off, I think, more than anything. I think that's its main thing is just to throw you into a panic because you have 15 minutes to answer this question. You're like, static? What does it mean? What do I do with it? And ultimately, like, you end up kind of not even, it doesn't show up too much into your answer. So, um, that's just a thing to throw you. Another thing to throw you is the question is pretty ambiguous in what's going on. So I guess I should mention this whole concept of check digits. So there is actually this is a pretty common thing in the world. Check digits are really common. Have you ever seen a credit card before? You know how like you can enter an invalid credit card number if you're like signing up for, say, you're buying Minecraft or something like I did recently. Um, you can enter. You can't just enter a random string of numbers because there's each different credit card number has check digits associated with it. So some are valid and some are not. And um, same with barcodes, for example. The reason you can't just take a marker and like change a barcode so you can get a cheaper price or something is because they're built-in check digits into the system of determining their numbers. So this isn't useless. This is a legit thing. You have no idea what this is though for the AP exam. Like that's not on the AP content. That's a cool fact, but you wouldn't know about this. So I'm just trying to give it some context. You wouldn't have that context on the exam, of course. So you just have to bear with me on this. So here's the deal. You have a couple of methods. You have get check, which will return the check digit for any given number. You must treat this as sort of like a magic function because you don't see the implementation. It says right there, implementation not shown, right? You just got to assume that get check will just work. It'll just return the correct number for a particular parameter. And then we have this is valid, which you send it a number with a check digit attached to it. And this is where this question gets kind of stupid. Like, I really don't like the way they've set this up, but this is the way they explain it. So, if you got confused and flustered when this question was presented to you, if you didn't do it in 15 minutes, you probably just got confused. So let me explain what's going on. Here, for example, they show you that the number 159, when we send it to getCheck, it returns the value 2, which means the check digit for 159 is 2. Okay? Um, and valid numbers are numbers followed by their check digit. That's what a valid number is. So there, it's not very clearly explained here, but that's the deal. That's what's going on. So 1592 is correct because 159's check digit is 2, and so that combined is a thing. How is this 2 determined? I think you might have got stuck searching endlessly for like what is the pattern? Why 2? What but don't. That's not part of the question. Remember, we're writing is valid, and we can just call get check, and we don't give we don't we don't give a flying fish how these numbers are determined. So I'll show you how I answer this question, and then we're gonna go on and take a look at the second one here. So here's my answer. I don't have an answer. Okay. All right, AP scholars, we're back with the question. I wonder, I might have edited that. Maybe I learned to edit. I don't know. But here's the deal. This is the header of the method. We already knew what that was. And I wrote one line of code to solve this. I think this is fine. I think this is great, this answer. So what we do is we need to get check with just the leftmost part of the number minus the check digit. So remember, the check digit is just the rightmost digit, and all the rest of the digits are the actual number itself. So we can get that by dividing by 10, and then we can check the digit and to see if it's the same as the last digit. So we can use modulus to get the last digit, the rightmost digit, and compare them. That's it, which is basically, like, I hate to say it, but that question was more reading, that can you understand what the question's asking, then there's some good skill here, like, divide by 10 modulus 10, like, that's a good skill. Using the get check method, that's good, that shows skill. But most of the skill comes from just understanding what the bleep is going on in the question. So yeah, I don't know, there it is. That's my solution. And as you can see, if it's a 15-minute question, like, they probably can't expect you to write too much. So there it is. Let's go on to the part B. So for part B, those are my answers that I'm uploading later. Where did my question go? Here we go. So part B. Here's the question. A programmer wants to modify the check digit class. So this is going to be one of those paragraph with their identify and describe or point form or whatever. So they're modifying the check digit class to keep track of how many times a call to isValid is made with an incorrect check. Oh my. A check digit, sorry. Anytime a call to isValid is made to an incorrect check digit, the count should be increased by 1. The programmer would like to implement this change without making any changes to the signature of isValid. What is a signature, you ask? This is the signature of isValid. It's this part here. That can't change, basically, is what it's saying. So that's good. Overloading isValid. So in other words, overloading means writing another isValid with different parameters. So we're not doing that. So write a description of how you would change the check digit class in order to support this modification. Don't write program code for this change. We just got to describe it. So we have to do two things. We have to identify and describe. So notice that was the same language as the previous question. So we're always going to be identifying and describing, we think. So first, identify any new or modified variables, constants, or methods. So identify, I think we need to make sure that we name the methods or variables or whatever, and what they do. And then also we have to describe them. For each new or revised variable, constant, or method, how it would change or be implemented, including visibility, so public versus private, and type, which is, int or string or whatever. So what's going on here is that we need to record how many times is valid happens, and the only way we can do that is really with a static variable. Our class, we're not instantiating this class as an object. We're calling it like we would call the math class, right? We're not gonna make when you make a call to the math class, you don't say math m equals new math and then m dot random, right? You just say math dot random. And the same with this check digit stuff, where we're just using it as we're just using it as the holder for these toolboxes. So that means we're not instantiating an object, which means no instance variables, just static class variables. So that's the clue there, and that's a pretty, like, you can see the emphasis on this question is very much static, static, static. I don't know what to say. Like, it's valid. It's in the material we should know for the AP exam for sure. It's a little bit overdone for these what it's normally worth on the AP exam, but I mean it's legit. So we'll keep going. So basically, that's my feelings on that. So let's just go over. I'll show you my answer. So this is actually an answer taken from the that AP teacher group that I was talking about. This sort of international forum for AP teachers, and this was sort of uh, put together by all the teachers. We sort of worked together to figure out what would be the best answer for this. So here's what we decided. So we're adding a private static int variable. So notice that we said private because we should encapsulate that. It should only be accessible through the methods that are going to modify it. We would not make it public. So whenever you have these questions, you got to choose private or public. So make a choice. Don't leave it blank because it specifically says you have to talk about the visibility, right? So this, when in doubt, I think private's the right answer to make. And then it's static because, again, it's like the math class. And then int, it's keeping track of how many times something has happened. So double doesn't really make sense. Only int makes sense. And we're calling it invalid count. Give it a name. Try to come up with a good name. And of course, we're adding it to the check digit class. And yeah, I mean, we should probably set it to 0 as a default, at the beginning, because otherwise, what's its original value? So the next thing is that we're going to describe how it will be modified. So we already said that the isValid method is supposed to change this every time it was returning false. So basically, we're going to just increment the invalid count variable we talked about in isValid each time the check digit in isValid's parameter is invalid. So that's the way we're modifying it. And so that change has to be made to isValid. And we're also going to be adding in some kind of like accessor method that's a public method. If it's going to access a static variable, it itself has to be static. That's just a rule. And it's going to be like an accessor method, kind of, but for static. Get invalid count that returns the variable. And I think that's a really good pattern. Did you see that? And that was sort of like the first question's paragraph answer. It turned out to be a private variable we were adding, and that meant we needed some kind of public method to access it. So those are pretty good things to keep in mind for your exam that's going to be on Friday. It's probably a good thing to bring up as well. I could see how that would be a thing that's sort of a pattern that would be coming. Yeah, but this question was especially the static kind of throws this question off a bit and makes it probably a lot more harder than it's actually going to be. Okay, so there you go. That's my take on the practice exam. I think it's a pretty good exam overall. It's very differently weighted, or not very differently, but question 2 is just a little bit differently weighted than all previous AP exams. So hopefully the one you see on Friday will be a little more tighter. but it does remind you to go and study things like static and all those terminology of what classes are all about, and so it's probably a good thing to be refreshed going into the AP exam. Okay, everybody, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. Definitely send me messages on Teams, email, whatever you need to do to get these questions asked. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Bye bye.